And then I came across the TCK literature, Ruth's work, and everybody that's involved in our community. And it all of a sudden, everything just like clicked.
Welcome to the Destinations Podcast. I'm excited to have you here today to meet Dr. Charles Warter. I'll tell you about him. He's a TCK. And it was so funny because another TCK that you know very well, or an ATCK, I guess she's parent to TCKs, but she's TCK adjacent, and we love her so much. We consider her a TCK, Dr. Paulette Bethel, introduced me to Dr. Warter. And immediately we hit it off. Of course, all the TCK things, right? All the thoughts, all the connections. And so I had to have him on the podcast. So I would love you to meet Dr. Charles Warter. Please tell me about yourself.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, I am a TCK, moved around a lot growing up, and that's kind of informed my worldview. And in part, it's what guided me into mental health and learning more about developmental psychology, because in developmental psychology, you can, in some ways, understand what's coming and what didn't happen priorhand, right? And for someone who moves around a lot, that's really helpful. So I ended up getting my doctorate at the Wright Institute in Berkeley, California, and then I got further training at UCSF, Kaiser Permanente, so academic medical centers for the most part. And then I was really lucky enough to get a pre-doctoral internship at USC's Children's Hospital Los Angeles. And then I did a postdoctoral fellowship in palliative care and bioethics at USC's Institute for Integrative Studies. So basically I was working with like ethicists and philosophers and physicians, and we were just thinking deeply about ideas around death and dying for children. So after that, I left Los Angeles, moved to San Diego because I wanted to surf more, honestly. And
Good reason.
Yeah, I'm a big surfer, so I was surfing. I built my private practice. It filled up really, really quickly. And some of the kids that were a little bit more acute, that needed higher levels of care, I would refer them out to different clinics in the area, and they would get worse. And they would come back. It was like taking 10 steps backwards when we were making 5 steps forward. So it was really sad to see all the work that we had done not really work out. So I decided to build a clinic, and that's where Protected Roots Integrated Treatment Center came. We are an intensive outpatient program and a partial hospitalization program for kids between the ages of 10 to 13, 14 to 18, and then we have a young adult program they call Transitional Adult Youth from 18 to 25. And we are a Joint Commission accredited site and a Department of Health and Clinical Services accredited site, which is basically the gold standard for clinics in the nation. The JCO is actually an international accreditation, so we were always thinking about our TCK community when we did that. And recently, we secured a very big contract with TRICARE TriWest, which is the #1 insurer for military families. So I can finally now work at a larger scale quantitatively with TCK communities, more specifically military families. That's me. That's a little bit about myself.
That's a lot. I love it. You sound so passionate about what you do for kids. Like, what got you into it? And is there something about your TCK background that helped you choose this path?
Yeah, that's a phenomenal question. So I didn't learn about TCK until I was 26. So there was a lot of things that happened between the ages of 26 to 28, which are like those first couple years of your doctoral program. And in the first 2 years, you get your master's, and that's kind of like the quote unquote filter year for doctoral candidates, whether you will continue or not. So when I was figuring out my dissertation topic, I did something that a lot of researchers called me search. And I started off learning about circular migration and like nomadic principles and evolutionary principles of, well, our species is innately a nomadic species, right? But that didn't seem to cover what I was experiencing. And then I came across the TCK literature, Ruth's work, and everybody that's involved in our community. And it all of a sudden, everything just like clicked. And I was like, oh, there's a word for this. There's an experience for this.
We've all been there.
Yeah. And there's grief. There's also
Yeah.
like a grieving process with that, right? Like you're just like, whoa, what if my community, my family, my nuclear family understood this earlier on? So it was really emotional. But I ended up writing a dissertation on the topic, more specifically on domestic third culture kids. So kids that moved from Florida to New York, California, Hawaii, Alaska. So within, the domestic setting.
Were they all U.S. based?
My study was, yeah,
Okay,
they were all
okay.
U.S. based. I think we had one that was Guam, but it's technically a U.S. territory,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So because it is different. A kid from New York is not always going to Joe in Santa Barbara. I'm like, a kid from Santa Barbara might not Joe with Savannah, Georgia. So
Yeah.
that piece I was really curious about, and I realized that my passion for kids and like developmental psychology was trying to find answers for some of the experiences I was going through, in the involuntary migration, which is what kids go through, right? Like the adults are the ones deciding where we go and
Yes.
when we go. Right.
You and I talked about that. And so it has a more profound effect on you than I ever expected. Tell us a little bit about that.
In terms of the literature?
And the literature and your not perception, your thoughts on the effect of not having decision-making power on where you go and when you go. So actually, before you say that, I'm going to tell you a story.
Sure. Yeah.
I tell the story a lot. So I think to myself, it must have left an impression, right? So I'm 8 years old. And so you and I talked about I'm really a global nomad TCK, whereas my brother, who's only 2.5 years older, is a military brat TCK based on our experiences. So it's really interesting. We won't get into that. But at one point, I was on a military base. I haven't been on as many as he has. And I'll never forget the teacher said one day, "Who's going to be here at the end of the semester?" And I specifically remember looking around. Nobody raised or who's leaving, not who's going to be here, who's leaving. Looking around and nobody raised their hand. And I remember thinking, all my friends are going to be here all semester, right? By the end of the day, not only was I not in the city or state, I wasn't even in the country anymore. So I was the one that was leaving, but I didn't even know. Not only did I not know, I didn't know where I was going until I got there. And it's so funny because as an adult, people will ask me different things like, what did your parent do? Or what did you do when you were there? Or what was their title? Or why did you go here? And I'm like, I don't know. And then they think it's weird that you don't want to know. It's like, I didn't think to ask. It's just how it was.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I think I really resonate with that because I think, when we talked about it, we didn't fall into the traditional categories that exist, right? Like missionary kids, military kids, diplobrats,
right.
Children of high-ranking CEOs. And, and my story is really particular in that my father, his voluntary migration was a result of some of the things he did professionally, which is he's a spiritual teacher. He teaches around transpersonal, like humanistic principles. So when he would move to these locations, the caveat was like it had to be beautiful, which was like Sedona, Arizona, Miami Beach, Hawaii. It was like very beautiful. So people would come to seminars and experience it, whatever it is he was teaching at the time.
And so not like Omaha.
No, it wasn't Omaha. No.
Actually, I haven't been to Omaha, so I don't know if it's beautiful, but
I mean, it wasn't White Plains, Illinois. It wasn't cold weather, that's for sure. Which just makes me like I can't do cold. But yeah, I mean, he had students, he had a following, he has all these things, and he still currently does. But one of the things what gravitated me to psychology was like there was a language for things that I was observing in his world that I didn't really understand, and it confused me. And then when we moved to all these different cultures, right? And Hawaii is a total different place. It's
like another continent, another country.
Yeah, it's an occupied territory.
Yeah,
there's a monarch.
Yeah.
There's history. There's a beautiful culture. There's I'm still really involved in traditional Hawaiian outrigger canoeing. Like
And the language.
the language,
Yeah.
the food, the community, and the warmth, and I think moving from Florida, where culture isn't always the most respected in a place like Florida, in my experience. Especially, there's specific pockets for sure, but then moving from that to like a place that implored it, right? Like really made you lean into that was an awesome opportunity to learn cultural humility and learn about the differences that we hold in ourselves and in others. But going back to what you were saying, yeah, it's really something where like, oh yeah, we've been friends since kindergarten. And I'm like, I will never have that.
No idea what you're talking about.
That you must have seen them like yo-yo in their life.
Yes.
But the thing we do have though, which I love about TCKs, is when we decide to have friends, when we really decide on that person, they're in our lives forever.
It's interesting because my brother, I remember when we were younger, I admire it now, but when we were younger, he would always really dig into his friendships. And I would say, that person never calls you back. Like, why do you keep trying? Because I was easy to let go, man. I'm like, see ya.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting how TCKness affects different people. But I love what you said about cultural humility. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, so I was born in Santiago, Chile. I'm technically Latino. My dad's Chileno.
A mí también.
A mí también, tal cual. It's a huge part of my identity. I'm also Jewish. There's another big part of my identity. My mom's Argentinian. But as you can imagine, I'm white passing. I go by Charles in the United States. So people immediately assume. So I can code switch between these cultures. And I think after the U.S., I actually went to like undergrad in Argentina. So I spent 4 years, 5 years there, and then a little stint in Europe, and then coming back. And I realized that the cultural humility that this country holds is so much more conscientious about the differences because we're a country of immigrants. We're a country of so many differences that exist here, both from Philadelphia. I'm thinking of like Philadelphia and the community, Baltimore, right? One of the rotations that I had an opportunity of interviewing at was at Kennedy Krieger Institute, which is affiliated with Johns Hopkins. And I go to the Johns Hopkins interview and they're like, how would you address the disparity between the Black community and Johns Hopkins? And I don't know if you're familiar with it. Johns Hopkins and the Black community of Baltimore have a really tense environment. There was this famous study on sickle cell, and they gave the placebo to Black groups and non-Black groups. And it was just a terrible story. I could send you the article later. But the Black community has a terrible relationship with Johns Hopkins for the most part, right? So that was like in a moment of noticing the disparity that exists on the East Coast. But kind of going back to Hawaii, it was like, I came in with the East Coast arrogance.
I've been there, man.
Yeah. And you know what? Not to use the most professional language, I got rocked, and it was appropriate. I needed to have like a checking and an opportunity to say, hey, bud, like come in here with humility. Now those are some of my closest, dearest friends: Tongans, Samoans, Micronesians. So it's Filipino food. I love Filipino food. So it's unique in that the TCK often presents like an adult by the time they're 10. Right? They're just so aware of all these pieces. But if you don't mind, I can talk a little bit about like the clinical differences. You brought up your brother, right? So in my research, I found that I'm very interested in attachment frameworks. I think attachment is, and now with the TikTok and the popularity and all the language around narcissism, and it's so, in my opinion, misinformation around like the clinical meaning behind it. But
I'm absolutely clueless. I don't really know what it is because there's so much, like people throw the word around like nothing.
Yeah, it's like a double-edged sword because you have people that are interested now, so it's mainstream talking about it more than when I was a kid. But they're using the language and really they're weaponizing some of the language, right? They're weaponizing the word narcissism, or they're weaponizing the word borderline. Oh, he's a narcissist, she's borderline. It's like not that simple. Like there's a lot of different pieces that go within that to understand that diagnostic criteria, right? But attachment, like one of the things I was interested in studying was why is it some families, one kid has a hard time and another kid doesn't, right? Why is it some kids are more adaptable and other kids have a really difficult time adapting? So I took some of the literature from Beery, which talks about like different identities that kids hold onto throughout their changes in the acculturation or acculturative stress research. And then I correlated it with their migratory patterns and some of the systems approaches that the family were doing. Essentially what that means is, was the family safe enough to contain the kid throughout the different stages? And or were they not? And what we found that kids that did move around a lot and had a really conflictual family situation, domestic violence, either substance abuse or simply just neglect, and they had a higher incidence of anxiety disorders, depression, substance abuse, conduct disorders, acting out behaviors, right? Whereas the kids that had, like, for example, a faith-based practice, like they would come, either to church on Sunday if they were part of the military communities, or they came every night and had dinner together, right? They had more than 16 plus years of education, which essentially means all of them had a graduate level education. Every single one of them pursued more and more and more. Right. I don't know if that was your experience.
I'm the anomaly in my family, right? I don't want to say too much. I'm going to tell everybody's business. But yeah. So, I taught at university, and that's something that was important to me. It's still important to me. Love education. I love learning. I can't say that about my siblings.
Yeah.
One did go to undergrad. The other two, they just do their thing. Yeah. So, and that's what they wanted to do, right? Yeah. It scared them on some level. But the other one who did go to undergrad, we had a different experience than the other two, right? The other two moved, which brings us back to, they moved around a lot. They didn't have decision-making power in that. Yeah. And so it's interesting to watch the choices that they make now.
Yeah. And it's fascinating because, I do believe in this population, in this community of ours, there's a high level of resiliency. Like really, really high. And I think it has mostly to do with exposure. Like, even if they're doing their own thing, it's not that they're, like, the high incarceration rate in this population is not, there is no, like, I haven't found any in the literature, right? I mean, there probably is somewhere out there, but it's not as common as other groups, right? Also, it's really hard to get a large sample for this group, right? Like, it's hard to find out what's actually going on a larger scale because most people don't even know what TCK means. Right. And that's part of my mission in like at this stage of my life, is to make sure that literature is disseminated, that people understand what it is this group of people are struggling with. And it's really, I don't know, now when I meet like young TCKs, right? Like, I had this one client, super moved around all over the world, like, obviously for HIPAA, I'm not going to go into it, but he, at the age of 12, had no clue what was going on inside of him. And there's this awesome word in psychology, it's called multiplicity, right? Like, holding all these different experiences within yourself and knowing how to manage all these different situations, either identities, or in our case, it's a hidden identity, right? It's like, we can't show it, right? Giving language to that, I think, is really important.
I agree with that. I mean, I had the same aha moment that you did when I found this all. It's like, oh, you mean those weren't quirks of my personality? There's actually a thing? It's actually called this?
Yeah, I mean, it's a powerful experience. And I think, one of the things I really like about TCKs is purpose. They do things from a place of purpose.
Do you think all TCKs do?
Even the ones that aren't as exhibitionist about it, the ones that don't show it, I think do.
So we had a little bit of a talk about, for me, it feels like a lot of TCKs want to do it on their own, want to do it themselves. They don't necessarily want to partner with people to move a purpose forward. Is that something that you see?
I think TCKs are very sensitive. I think there's a sensitivity in working collectivistically because they haven't had that longitudinal experience. Right. So like the individualistic piece that you're mentioning, right? If you grew up feeling that everyone was going to leave or you were going to leave, it would make it quite hard to work collaboratively. It's a gross generalization. I can't speak to all of them, right? But that's my intuition. It says, I'm not used to working in groups. I'd rather just do this individualistically. And I see that across a lot of different TCK organizations.
Well, what about we were just talking about how relationships, TCKs are so great at holding on to relationships. So that doesn't translate into work.
That's interpersonal. That's not collectivistic, right? They choose that one friend in Kenya and they'll call them up and they'll say, hey, it's good to see you. And it'll be like nothing, right? And then they'll call the other friend in Alaska that they've been close to. But see, those are two different data points. That friend in Kenya may never meet that other friend in Alaska.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So the relationship piece, like when they decide, isn't in a group. They don't feel comfortable in groups.
So in group is 3 or more?
I think in order to do good collaborative work, it has to be way more than 3 or 4, right? If you think of any organization, you need a team. And if it expands, you need a bigger team. Like the example I give you, like the clinic, right? The clinic started with 4. Now we've expanded to much more, and there's so many more people, and I have to pivot the way I work, which is I do better with 3 to 4 at a time, right? To delegate work in one domain, to delegate work in another domain, and give that collectivistic trust that they're going to take on the values of the company and apply the clinical work in an effective way. That was my growing edge. I was not comfortable with that. I still am very uncomfortable with that. The team isn't huge, but it's ideally going to get even bigger, right?
Is it the fact that it's a team or is it the delegation piece?
It's the control piece, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. I'm still trying to figure out where that fits. I mean, I think my TCK-ness really speaks loudly in the way I show up and the way I lead. Yeah. And I find that my particular, I think it would be multiplicity. It's interesting because we call it dimensionality. There's so many parts to it. My brother's a military brat, but I was partially a military brat and partially an educational TCK and partially an adoptee, which is a whole nother story, right? And all different things. And so different, I think so differently than so many people. It's hard. I mean, I usually see where the other person's coming from. It's very difficult for them to understand where I'm coming from. Or they'll see it a certain way. And I'm like, that's not what I said at all, and you have to, it's really interesting. One of the reasons we have cultures, I think we have a group of people, very much myself included, that wants to not have to explain themselves all the time. It would be nice, it's great that you're the one who can build the bridges and connect people and you can explain what they're saying to each other. Yeah. It'd be nice that somebody could do that for you.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. I'm laughing because I completely agree. I completely agree with that.
So, and I think that's where, is that a correct use of multiplicity?
Yeah.
I think that's where that becomes not a hindrance, but it becomes interesting because and that's what I love, every different dynamic and bringing it all together is so creative and so different and so unique. And but to me, it always comes down to the core. It's that in-betweenness, that, this or that, in or out, or not in or out, in between at all times, that connects us.
Third space.
The third space.
The third space.
Yeah.
Right. And from a psych world, like psych language, I truly believe there's a universal language. And that comes from attunement and self-awareness. If you're self-aware and you're attuned, it doesn't matter your lived experience. You can connect on a human level. And if that translates across culture, language, trauma, non-trauma, like if you just attune and you're with someone in that space together, that i.e. third space, that's where things expand.
So do you think TCKs, well, as a whole, it sounds like you don't think TCKs can excel in the group dynamic.
Oh, no, they definitely can.
Okay.
They absolutely can. Like Barack Obama's an example of that.
Yes.
He's a perfect example of that. I think it takes a lot of self-awareness to get there for TCKs. I think it takes a lot of acknowledging of like, oh, is this my story kicking in? And can I place it here and connect with somebody else and be there, be of service for another person, right? Or be of service in the effort of whatever it is you're working on, right?
So what happens when you're tired of being of service?
You take breaks. You go to Boulder. You you go to Big Sur. You need to replenish yourself. Like especially, TCKs that are more of a giving nature. And there is a separation there. You'll see some TCKs are really, it's not that they're takers, it's that it's really hard for, they have a limited amount of resources to give intrinsically, that any aspect of giving is like, it's very difficult for them, right? Because, one of the things that in Ruth's book is they call it the farewell box, right? Where you put everything in the box and you take that box with you and you have a little memento of, a rock or a place. And either you can bury the box there and come back to it like a treasure hunt, or take it with you as you go along. For some TCKs, I think that box is limited. They only have so much in that box. Other TCKs, they bring the entire closet, right? And they usually pack a lot. I like to use that metaphor for the types of people that come from this space. It's the ones that are giving and empowering and trying to change something and coming from that purpose place. And the other ones that are saying, I want to give, but I don't always have the most to give because I'm XYZ thing. And that's been my reframe because, I'm very much a giver. I'm very much like what can I do better in this space? And what can I do to make other people's lives better?
Do you think TCKs often attract people who will take from them?
Depends on the stages, right? There's a lesson in that, right? I've been very susceptible to takers. Like, discovering that discernment is kind of tough for us. And I think it goes back to like friendships, right? You mentioned the story of, all my classmates are going to stay with me for that semester, right? That's scarcity.
Well, I think that day broke me a little bit.
Yeah.
But the reason I say that is the me, except for that story, the me that I know. Doesn't matter if I.
That's because you're centered, right? Like you can connect to that part of yourself, right? You have a strong enough, they call it in psychoanalytical language, ego strength. There's enough ego strength there for you to go into the world and confront it, right? There's the other flip side of that is depending on people is a really healthy and important thing to do.
That's one thing I've had to learn. However, what's interesting too, I think it's depending on people is a skill.
Oh, yeah.
Like to do it properly.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you're like, okay, I'm going to do this. It's like, okay, this person doesn't seem to be enjoying it. What did I do wrong?
Right. So what you just said there is really important. TCKs internalize, what did I do wrong? Sometimes it's the context. Sometimes the context was wrong. Sometimes the other person was wrong on the way they were engaging. Creating that separation is really hard for TCK, for people that move around a lot, nomadic folks, right? It's just hard. And I will say it's hard for most people to discern that way, but TCKs are very susceptible to saying, I must have done something wrong.
What would be your 3 top tips for TCKs to thrive?
Um, believe in your intuition is the first one.
Where did that one come from?
Well, you use your intuition and your, i.e., perception, a lot when you move around. Like, it's how you gauge rooms. It's how you walk into rooms, right? You're kind of looking around. That skill is taught to TCKs at a very young age. Like, if you see children of like diplomats, right? If you ever watch how they observe, like they walk into a room, they'll walk through the room, circle the room, and walk towards one angle where they know someone familiar. They'll command the room that way. And they'll basically, it's like sheep herding. You'll see people start to gravitate towards them, right? Okay. So your intuition is already inherently advanced. Trust it. That's the first one. It's a very powerful skill. Yeah. The other one that I think is really important is depending on others isn't always a risk. Depending on others is a muscle. So if you learn to depend on people, sometimes those people won't meet whatever your needs are at that time. And that happens more often than not because that's just people, right? Yeah. But it's a skill that you need to cultivate. TCKs are very scared of depending on others. Okay. So that dependency is really, really, really important. And the third one that I really, really enjoy is when your mom and dad walk into the room, or your caregivers walk into the room and say, hey, we're about to move in the next month or in the next 6 months, and you see those boxes, be playful with the boxes. For little ones, this is most for the parents actually, like build little castles with those boxes. Become comfortable with the smell of cardboard. Like, that doesn't have to be a trigger. For a lot of TCKs it is, but you can make it a little bit more integrative. And that's parents actually caring for the kids. So it's kind of like a catch-all, that last piece. It's more for the parents that are making the kids move. All these kids are vulnerable. They're incredibly vulnerable, right? They didn't have a choice in any of this. So a lot of the things that we do at the clinic, and which I'm hoping to do now with TRICARE and TRIWest and the military families, is specific curriculum to help them build skills before and after they move. Because if you can hold them in that space, we talked about attunement, if you can hold that space, you're golden. They're going to do very well in life. I tell families all the time, like, you won the lottery if you can do this correctly.
Right. I mean, I feel like it's a superpower.
Yeah.
Right. So the kids that you work with, I want to say something, and I hesitate to say this because it doesn't sound like the right question. Like, what is the success rate? Like, is it a successful thing working, let's say, with the military families? Or is it challenging? Or both? I
think we're at the beginning stages of working with the military family. Breaking in, quote unquote, into the military community has not been an easy one for the first answer to that question. In terms of success rate with the clients that we have had, it's a pretty acute site. Like, it's a partial hospitalization program. It's an intensive outpatient program. These kids were hospitalized due to a lot of different risks, sent to residential, and then come to us, or at the hospitalization, they come to us. So the level of acuity we work with is just raw diagnostic criteria, just raw systems work. Our whole MO is family first and family focused. And, we offer multifamily group therapy, for example, every day. That's where we have 10 families in a room sometimes learning from each other. And you'll have a military family learning from someone who's born and raised in San Diego and is never going to leave, or someone who's on the border of Arizona from like that UMOM border or the border of Tijuana, and they're Spanish-speaking folks, and we have a translator next to them kind of helping them engage. So I think in terms of the success rate, our success rate is quite good. We measure things. We measure the anxiety scales and depression scales, and all arrows point downwards. So we're very proud of that. Yeah.
That's awesome, actually. I think that's great. And so, given all of that, I mean, because that sounds like a lot.
Yeah.
It sounds like a lot.
Yeah, Boulder was really nice.
I was going to say, it's
Yeah,
Boulder. That's
Boulder
how
was
you get
really
yourself back to
nice.
center.
Yeah.
So, how often do you do that?
Getting back to center.
Yeah.
I mean, I mentioned that I still do Hawaiian traditional canoeing. I do that 5 days a week, in the morning and sometimes in the evening, 4 to 5 times a week. I surf almost religiously. It's my temple, like it's my place. I have a meditation practice. I have my own therapist. I truly believe that if you're not addressing all these other domains of yourself, both the physical, mental, spiritual, at least the kind of work that I do, is you won't last. So you need to have those addressed as you go on.
How often would you address them?
The needs?
Well, if it's meditation, you might do that daily.
I do that daily, yeah. I do that daily. My own therapist once or twice a week for my own therapy, and I'm public about that. I think everyone should. And then the exercise piece, like the water for me is really, really important. Just sitting sometimes on the lineup and surf and just waiting for the waves and taking that breath before going through. And then the travel piece. So I think at least every 3 to 4 months I need to travel. It doesn't have to be far, right? It doesn't have to be far. Like it could be a 2-hour flight from San Diego to Boulder. Yeah. We're about to go to Japan soon. Like it's just I need to leave this place.
I get it.
Right?
I get it.
You experience that too?
But do you ever have people who take offense to that? Like
the travel piece?
Yes. Like, can't you just be here? Can't you stay here? Can't you love it here and be present?
Yeah. I guess the people that take offense to it think traveling is expensive, and it doesn't have to be expensive. Like when I was...
So they think it's privilege.
Yeah, they think it's more privilege-leaning stuff. It really doesn't have to be. Like I traveled Argentina for 2 months at the age of 20 to 21 through the Patagonia on $500. Like you can do it. It was rough. I was skinny. It was rough and tough, but it was like it was cool. And sometimes I would hitchhike. It was a really cool experience. Yeah. So I don't. If you want the exposure to this, you don't have to be this uber wealthy, privileged person to do it. You can, it doesn't have to be that far, right? Like the offense piece of like, why can't you just love this place? Like when I came back from Argentina, started in Seattle, 2 years in Seattle, 4 years in Berkeley, a couple years in LA, and now I'm in San Diego. I don't know if you see the trend here, but I've been aiming for that cold over, like leaving the cold, right? I'm feeling pretty good about San Diego for now. And it's in line with the other parts of my identity, right? Hawaiian outrigger canoeing. I'm not Hawaiian. It's not my land. I respect that land. But it's a huge part of who I am, is knowing that I have this other part of my pleasure, which is Hawaiian culture and traditional paddling. So yeah, that was a long-winded answer. Yeah. No,
it was great. It was great. Yeah. I mean, I could talk to you for a long time.
We could do it again.
I'm sad that we have to wrap it up, but yeah, really insightful. I would love to hear more about how your new, do you call it a contract? Is it a contract?
Yeah, it's a contract.
Works. Especially, I'd love to see the difference it's making in these kids' lives.
Yeah, me too.
And I'm with you to get the word out as far and wide as possible. That's why we do the work that we do here at Cultures. Yeah. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you too. Thank you for having me.
Oh, yes. It was a pleasure. And thank you. We look forward to bringing you more stories like this so you can live in full color and explore your cultural passions. Thanks for being part of the Destinations Podcast family. We're so glad you're here, and you can help us grow as well. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe, whether you're listening or watching. And make sure that we bring you content that helps you not only be truly authentically you, but helps you embrace your cultural passions.